Well. Hello, everybody. This is the very first episode of the Radibros Podcast here on this channel. My name is Neil.
I'm Jerry.
And I'm going to be the host for most of the episodes for the series onwards. And of course, in the future, expect there to be many more members as well as other guests onto the show. Now, before we actually continue or get into today's topic, we would like to talk a little bit about why we create this channel as well as the purpose of this podcast series. Jerry, could you tell us a little bit more about some of the purposes that we look forward to?
Well, here on the Radibros channel, what we're gonna do is we're gonna try to speak English and motivate you all, the people who are listening to this podcast right now, to actually speak more English. And what more? We are trying to spread this message of positivity.
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
Yes.
And of course, we ourselves want to have some self-growth and want more improvement in our English speaking skills. And so those are the main purpose of this podcast.
Exactly. Thank you very much, Jerry. And yes, as he has just mentioned, right, once again, these are some of the goals that we want to focus on. And another kind of purpose, right, that we also want to share with you is that this basically serves as some kind of memory for us to remember. Because usually when we have normal conversations with one another, it's not really, we really take it for granted. We don't just save it somewhere else, or we don't think too much about it. But this is a way for us to capture all of the good memories, right, in order to keep it to ourselves, right, as well as share useful information for all of you to listen to as well. Right, but with that said though, right, of course, the channel isn't only going to be about the Radibros podcast, it will also probably include vlogs and other travel trips in the future as well. Right, Jerry?
Yep, that's me, and I'm gonna be doing the vlog. Well, let's have a sneak peek actually. You know, in my near my school and university, there's a whole lot of restaurant, rundown place, but I would really love to share that with you and how those food taste, and actually you might want to try it out sometime later in the future, right?
I think that's a very good idea actually, especially for maybe not even the locals but also the foreigners as well, right? I think it's worth a try to review foods, right? It's also a way for not only for all of us to practice once again speaking English, but also as a way for us to explore the world around us, right? Even to the smallest things, the things that are around us. Sometimes we tend to forget those very simple moments in our lives. Right, but hopefully with all of that said, as well as the introduction, right, I would like to lead into today's main topic. Of course, we have just been mentioning about the reason why we created this channel, and that's also our main topic, which is going to be about purpose. So tell me a little bit about what you think purpose is, Jerry.
Purpose, huh? That's a bit tough question, but for me, what purpose is something that you feel like doing in life, like some goal, you have a target, you want to try toward a target, and that's mostly what purpose is for me. Because if I have something to try for, I can actually feel alive and actually, feel like having an actual purpose per se.
Right, exactly. Well, I would definitely agree with the idea that the purpose, a person's purpose is somewhat similar to a goal, something that you want to achieve. Perhaps it could be as simple as just, I don't know, maybe getting scores on a good test, high scores on a test, or for some people, right, maybe let's talk about some of us, right, we might want to have a very loving family in the future, like maybe a loving wife, a loving husband, right, maybe have some children in a very warm home, right, it depends, right, each person has their own purposes in life. And when we talk about purpose, I think there are definitely terms for what you would call a short-term goal, right, or a long-term goal. So currently, Jerry, what would you identify as your short-term and your long-term goals?
Hmm. Well, I do have an SAT test coming up this next week Saturday actually, and I think my currently short term goal is to well get a high score on that SAT, and for my long term goal, well, I think those are like my lifelong dream of becoming a scientist or a physicist, or maybe even an indie dev. Because right now I have a lot of dreams to chase, and I think that's a good thing. Because dream don't have to be something you can catch; it's just something you want to chase. It's not about the goal, right? It's about the journey you have along the way.
All right, very very insightful thoughts from Jerry as well. Yes, I do agree with Jerry when he mentions about the journey, right? Or when you talk about a long-term goal, or when you think about a purpose, right? You need to have something that's more about the journey, right? About what you can learn on the way. Some people, I think, they might be too focused on the end goal, right? Or the achievement or the result, that they kind of just forget the progress that they made along the way. They don't really, how should I say this, compare themselves, right, to before. And so this is, I'm going to sidetrack a little bit here, but that's also the reason why I feel like some people, they just basically, they don't have like that kind of motivation to keep continuing, right? Or they don't have the reason to pursue their passions. And that's kind of a shame, right? Because they don't see the improvement in themselves. And I think a lot of people lack this kind of thing as well. But yes, when talking about me, right, about my purpose, I'd say that currently I'm looking forward to just helping as many people as possible when it comes to teaching English. But of course, if it's not obvious already, my purpose is wanting to be an English teacher, somebody who can truly transform the world. As in, I want to bring English knowledge to some of the individuals who might not have the conditions or who want to improve their English even further. And I guess doing this podcast, right, is a way for me, right, as well as my team, to reach out to the wider world and help other people with basic English skills as well.
You know what's funny, Neil?
Yes?
I think that one day these podcasts might as well be used in IELTS listening tests.
IELTS
or even
listening test.
some
Oh.
listening tests in your school. Like imagine.
Oh, definitely. I think this could be like a very interesting way. Personally, with this kind of debate, though, maybe not, right? Because I don't. It even though it technically is natural speech, right? It is taken from real life sources. It's going to be very hard for people to keep up, or for schools to implement things like these, right? After all, I would say that when we talk about the purpose of the school, it is about the ability for students to use English effectively. But I would argue that this isn't really the best way for them, seeing how schools they mostly focus on grammar and listening.
That's fair. For Vietnamese school, we are focusing too much on the actual grammar. So many Vietnamese people nowadays, they really don't have a good speaking skill. Most likely they have good writing skills and grammar skill, but truly, to get on a conversation, you don't really need those stuff. What you really need is the speaking skill. The actual way you talk and convince people through via speech.
Okay, but I think we should get back onto our topic a little bit here, right? So once again, purpose, like Jerry mentioned earlier, is something that people work towards too, right? Whether it is something that is right in front of them, or a lifelong ambition that could take a while to achieve. Right, and of course we also mentioned, right, some of our purposes in life, right? Jerry wants to be a scientist in the future, while I want to be an English teacher who is able to, I guess, help as many individuals as I could. Right, but the next question I think is a little bit interesting. Jerry, have you heard of I think during the COVID-19 pandemic, I think there was something called a let it rot or lying down lifestyle. Could you tell us more a little bit about that?
Oh yeah, I think I've heard that from my teacher and even from the news. Is it those thing where the people they're just doing the bare minimum to actually survive and not actually living.
Yeah, I think it's that one actually. Yeah. Something related to that, I believe. I think let me just remember a little bit about what I should mention here. Right. So when we talk about this let it rot kind of lifestyle, it basically means that just like Jerry said, right, is that you do the bare minimum. So if I understand it correctly, Jerry, is it something like just maybe work enough hours and then leave work? Is that kind of like the idea that we're getting here?
I remember it's not even working at enough hour. Those people who were joining in that activities per se, they were only doing work when they need to. Like they're gonna work for a while. For example, some guy gonna work for 1 month in a, let's say, part-time job, and the amount of money he gets, he's gonna use it throughout, let's say, 6 months. He's just gonna lie down, do nothing but just buy the bare minimum to live. Essentially, it's, for me, it feels like they're just wasting time. They're not using that money to having fun, to be developing themselves, or building a better future. All they're doing is, well, survive. They're no difference than those animals in just, in the wild, those bear, those pig. They're just eating just to survive.
Okay, I think that might have been a little bit too far there. But the way that I'm getting your message here is that some people, like when we talk about the bare minimum, is that they kind of just reach to a point where they think that it's enough and they don't try harder. Personally, this also actually, well, the concept of bare minimum, I would say it would also appear in studying as well. I've personally, even though I hate to admit it, yes, I have been lacking, right, or slacking off for some time during my school years, especially for that one subject. I think it was biology. Yes, unfortunately, I'm not a very huge fan of biology, and whenever the teachers, right, give me a test or something like that, whenever I have to study, I just try to understand the main points. I don't dive deeper into research or do anything after class. I just learn the materials that I've learned and just try to get a measly maybe 6 or 7 during the test. And personally, I think that is very lazy of me and is something that shows that I might be a part of this so-called trend or movement. But what about you, Jerry? Have you been in this kind of situation before?
For me, I think it's pretty often that I'm being in this situation, but I wouldn't call those actually the movements.
Yeah.
But rather just me slacking off. I remember back then when I was doing those PowerPoint presentation, I was just, sometime when I feel too lazy, I was just slacking off and slapping in some little stuff of what do you call it again? Oh, template. Yeah, right.
Yes.
And those who are lazy, those people who use a template, well, they really don't have any designing skills in them, and yet they're still creating pieces of art that they call art them are from theirs, and actually presenting them. So for me, whenever I use template, yeah, I feel like being one of those guys who end up moving, because that's essentially what the template are. Are the people doing the stuff for you.
Right. And yes, right, in order to talk about this, right, the reason that I also want to bring this up, right, when we talk about this kind of, well, like Jerry said, it's not really a movement, but a tendency that the youth, right, unfortunately is heading towards to. And I agree, like, I think all of you, right, viewers, like the audience, have just heard both of our stories. And yeah, I believe that this could be very detrimental to young people. First off, if you sit, right, and try to not really improve yourself, right, this is what we call being self-content, I believe, or believing that you are good enough, right, and you don't want to improve yourself. As we mentioned earlier on the goals, right, of our channel, right, the reason that we want to establish this is to improve ourselves continuously. And if you just don't have the ability to continue, as in like you feel lazy and you think that you're good enough, you don't want to improve, it could be a very toxic, right, or a very outdated way of thinking. And so, Jerry, could you tell me some of the drawbacks, right, or some of the consequences if the youth, right, don't really find purpose in their life, or if they don't have the motivation to improve themselves.
Hmm. The consequence in the do you say the consequence?
Yes, there's consequences, exactly.
So for the consequence of those, from what I think, if they lost the motivation, the purpose of themselves to actually keep on keeping up and well, getting better, what they're gonna be getting at is they're gonna get outmatched by other competitors, and in the future they may not even get a job or the necessary skills they need for their actual purpose. Let's say
Yeah.
because I've read this thing in a manga or light novel where a guy who was a genius at first say something along the line of when you're a child with your current skill you're a genius, but once you grow older those skills become normal. That's the norm. And so if you keep thinking that you're really good and you don't need to improve anymore, you're just gonna be stuck there and everyone's gonna outmatch you. Because in life it's a race. It's not just usual ranking. It's not a set amount of skill. It's not a solid thing. It's always changing. Everyone is still keeping up with the race. Everyone is still running. So no matter how far ahead you are, they're gonna catch up if you don't keep running.
Yes, I exactly agree with that. I've actually been told by my parents many times that that's also the reason why I try to study hard. I think, Jerry, you would also have like the same kind of story as well, right? Maybe your parents have also tried to tell you off because of that. Is that true?
Yeah, well, it's typical Asian parents.
Yes. But yes, once again, right, is that another thing, right? You can see that there are a lot of consequences if the youth, right, refuses to continue or, well, basically continue, right, their journey or trying to find a purpose. And I think another thing that we should also mention, right, aside from not having a purpose, is that what about people who think that they found what they want, but they've never really made a clear decision? And this is very true because, Jerry, would you help me out here? Is that I think there's like stories of people who entered university and then they feel like, oh, this major isn't just for me, or this subject isn't just for me, this future job suddenly I stopped liking it. Why am I not following my dreams? Have you ever seen like these kinds of people before?
I think I have. Well, I think there's like two type of people. They should divide into two type of people when they reach that kind of conclusion. Well, the first type are those people who actually think that those line of work, those skills, and those job they're looking for is actually not for them. It's not because of the difficulty of the job, rather is the actual effect it have on people and everyone around them, or actually just the wages. Like for example, take computer science. Now many people come in computer science thinking it might take the lead in the future, but once they're in, they really realize like how competitive the actual job is, and how it really doesn't depend much on your skill. It's just your logical thinking, and if you're lucky enough to find out the part of the problem and solving the problem. Well, for the other type of person, I would say there are actually those kind of people who just give up when they saw the difficulty of the actual job they're looking for. Those people, for example, when they study calculus, well, the college level of calculus, right?
Yeah, I think
It's
so.
really reached the point where calculus become really hard for some subjects, for some majors. And once some people reach that difficulty, some of them just give up. They just don't feel like, working on it and improving themselves anymore. They just feel like, well, with this kind of skill, I can just do other easier job. And I think that's really harmful because you're essentially losing your purpose. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, honestly, once again, I do believe that that's also like a very big problem for the youth as well, right? Especially, I've personally, right, in my experience as well, in order to add on to your story as well as my question, I've actually had some friends during high school, and I asked them, "Hey, have you decided on what you want to do in the future yet?" And unfortunately, some of my friends, they said that they still haven't had a clear answer, or they never really responded to me at all. So as a result, like, I never really understood that, and I wish that perhaps some of my friends have a clearer image of what they want to be in the future. And even though, despite all of like the opportunities that the, like, sometimes the schools, right, would go to the high schools and try to ignite or create like a burning passion, right, or to give the students a sense of purpose of what they want to achieve in the future, or what career they want to pursue, I still feel like it isn't quite effective. Just like Jerry said, it could be because of outside factors that affect what kind of career or purpose a person might decide. That could be salary, right? That could be family. What?
Competitiveness?
Yes, competitiveness of the job market, right? Or perhaps even family pressure. That could also be a thing. But it could also be that person's thing as well. Like, maybe they feel that they're inadequate for the job. They might not be able to take on such tasks, right? And yes, in order to combat this issue, right, our next question, hopefully our last one as well, is going to revolve around how, Jerry, how have you personally found your own purpose? I think another question you should answer first is, was there a part in your life where you felt like you didn't have a purpose, or you felt lost, as people would describe it?
Well, I don't think I've ever reached the part where I'm actually lost yet. But, well, for once, there was one time when I actually feel like, well, you just say it's kind of lost. That was when I got, well, outmatched by the skill of someone's video editing. I remember it was in high school where I got this one friend who also really loved doing video editing. And we both would essentially just team up and actually do video editing together. However, our editing style were very different. Back then, I think I also realized this, but now, if I think back about it, it's really dumb how I got upset and actually lost after, well, hearing what you have to say. Okay, well, back to it. Well, there was this one time we have to do a project about, the Thiên Ho Pagoda. You guys know that place?
That's actually a very interesting place. Maybe in a future episode we could talk about that, but can you give us a very brief description of what the pagoda looks like?
Well, the Thiên Ho Pagoda is just, well, a really old pagoda that is derived from the people of, how do you say this? The people of China?
You could say that, yeah.
Yeah. And so, okay, back to the topic. As we were filming in the actual pagoda, there was actually a lot of mix-up. There was a lot of mistake that was, the film crew let's take. And, well, those actually lead to one big argument that we have with each other. And even on the editing side, there was still some kind of mistake, because my editing style was really just minimalistic, and his were more vibrant and more lifelike, more of those YouTube video that you saw on the internet. Yeah.
No, yeah, like, sorry, like with those like big clickbaity and like big colors. Is that what you're trying to say?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And so our design idea didn't really match up, and well, there was one part after I finished most of the editing and fixed some part of him that I feel like don't fit on the overall theme. He would just went out and say straight to my face that, your editing suck. And at that point,
no. That sounds so sad, Jerry. Please continue.
I mean, now that I think about it, it's not really that much of a deal. It's just, if you think about it, it's just like people online just saying, "Oh yeah, you suck." You could just pass it on. But for some reason back then, it really affects me really, really deep. And what I did afterward is that I just abandoned my video editing. I never take on another video editing job, well, even to today. But, well, it changed because I was about to take on another job soon. And yeah, it also affected my other designing For example, there was a few more PowerPoint design and projects that was coming up, and I was just, well, give up the chance to prove myself of how good I am with the designing, just because of the small little word that he said. And so at that point, I feel really lost and lost my purpose. Like, oh, I'm not good at editing. I'm not being that guy anymore. Yeah, I think that's it.
Oh yeah, definitely. That definitely sounds like a really story, right? A really interesting story about how like the fact that other people overshadow you and how other people's negative comments, right, would push you into a state of being lost, right, of being purposeless, right? And I think that could be like a very sad thing, but you said that you've managed to overcome it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right, I'm very happy for you. Yes, right. And as for me, once again, I do believe that personally, I've never really lost my sense of purpose quite yet, maybe in the future. But the closest example I have is basically deciding on whether, right, which kind of major I wanted to pursue. Because at one point during the time when I entered university and I had to make a decision, I could either go to the foreign trade university where the jobs, right, the job opportunities after school would be very good, as well as the ability to use English even further. I think there's something called business English or marketing English. I'm not very sure what the correct term is, right? But it could be very useful for me, right? If I ever wanted to use my English skills for good, right? I could go to different conferences. I could talk to other foreigners, right? Maybe in order to create or establish like a connection between Vietnam companies and foreign companies, all right? On the other hand, though, at the same time I could also use my English in order to help people with English, even though the job isn't as high paying, right? And perhaps the first years inside the school could also be boring, but nevertheless, right? I felt like I had to stick to my resolve, and I decided that the metric that I was going to use, or the measurements, right, to make me decide was whether I liked that field or that sector or not. And of course, once again, like in the beginning of the podcast, I've told you that I decided to stick with becoming an English teacher. But yes, that is basically one of the parts where I feel like I've been lost for a very short while, right? But hopefully it should give you a kind of idea of what you need to do when you're presented with different options and when you need to find your own purpose. And so, Jerry, my next question, of course, like we just mentioned, is that what would be your advice to young people so that they could find their own purpose?
Well, I think my advice for young people is just to, well, keep trying, keep running, and keep on with that race. Because no matter where you are, like as I said with my story, wherever you get kicked down, you're not actually just stuck there. You're still in the race. Keep running. Like the story, the rabbit and the tortoise. Well, like the rabbit, he's fast. He got a head start. But the tortoise, he keep on running. He keep on with the race, and at one point he surpassed the rabbit. And just like in life, if you got purpose, even if you don't have a purpose, just keep doing what you're good at, or just something that you enjoy. Once you're like doing it really a lot of time, after a while, you slowly find your purpose. There will be something just activating you. Like for me, like for my Blender 3D modeling skills, at one point, I just keep on working with the 3D modeling skill, and slowly people will just start recognizing me. And then I would just feel like I have a purpose, like that. Oh, I can make those 3D models, and I am doing good for the society, right?
Yes.
And from that point on, I would have a purpose. So just like you all, just keep on with the race. Just keep working on what you're good at, and at one point, you will find your purpose.
Right. Thank you very much, Jerry. Right. Once again, his advice is to keep on going, keep on trying. Right. And especially, right, I should also add in as well is that because I also kind of resonate with him. right? Is that another thing that when you're trying, right, you should also try to ignore other people's negativity, right? Don't let other people's mood or their performance, right? Like if you see someone who's really good at the thing that you're doing, doesn't mean that you should take it as like, oh, that person is way better than me. I will never be as good as them. No, use them as your motivation, right? Think of it like standing on the shoulders of the giants, right? You have to learn from people who are better than you. And that leads me to my kind of next advice is that during school, right, you should find somebody, maybe a best friend, who could help you with your studies, right? So this is what we call like a study buddy, or form a small group, right? You can have like maybe 2 or 3 more friends, right, to form a small studying group where each of you will help with each other in different subjects, for example. And from that, right, you can probably imagine, right, where you want to go next, like which subjects you might want to continue pursuing or which one you might not want to continue, right? You could even ask your friends for some opinions, right? But another thing is that you should also participate in many different activities. For example, I guess I could say that join in speaking competitions like me. I've participated in a lot of English speaking competitions in order to truly develop a sense of, wow, I want to teach others people English. And yeah, I think that's going to basically be it for my advice on how young people could find purpose. Everyone, right, I believe that the youth has something very interesting, Jerry. Do you know what's called?
The youth?
Yes, exactly, right? Youth or enthusiasm, right? You're like these people, they're basically the future of the entire world, right? And they have a lot that they can change the world. The main issue is whether they can find their own purpose, their own place in life, right? And of course, don't be so hopeless, right? Don't think that you don't have a purpose. Everyone does, and you will just find it eventually. But I should urge you to find it quick, because if you reach to a point where you're about to find a job, or when you enter school like a university, right, and you still haven't made your choice, it could be more detriment than you think. So you still have, so if to those of you who are still young, right, you still have a lot of opportunities for, just like Jerry said, to make mistakes and try again. But be quick, because time always runs out, and at some point you will have to make a decision and stick to it. But yes, I think that's going to be it for our podcast, right, on today's first episode of the 4 Radibros Podcast. We've talked a lot about today, right, Jerry? And I think the audience could have also learned a lot of things from this as well. Once again, thank you very much for tuning in to today's 4 Radibros Podcast. And hopefully in the future, once again, we hope to see some more new faces, as well as maybe advanced equipment, so that all of you can see what we truly look like behind the screen.
Oh yeah, and do you remember? We also have another guy that was supposed to be coming today.
Oh
yeah, our third brothers.
Oh yeah,
Arnold,
yeah.
wasn't it?
Yeah, I think it was
Yeah.
Arnold. I think he hasn't appeared yet. I think he said that he was a little bit busy with some of his other personal stuff, so he couldn't join. But that's about it for today. Thank you very much once again, and we hope that you enjoy our little podcast. And we'll see you on the next episode.
Jerry and Neil, peace out.